We are now recording. Take it away, Pete.
Thanks, Karen. Well, my name is Pete Flood. I'm a Compliance and Enforcement Manager with the Louisville Metro Department of Public Works. I also work a lot with the Waste Management District, which we'll talk a little bit about today. What I'm going to talk about today is a solid waste study and recommendations that was completed several years ago. What came from that, some of the updated metrics that will be sprinkled in, I'll kind of give everybody an idea of where we are, where we're going. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, why did we want to conduct a waste study? And the biggest reason is because we needed to know that we had adequate disposal space for our community for the foreseeable future. And we do, which is a good thing. However, we want to be proactive with this. And because, when landfill space starts to get a little bit closer to being gone, the price of doing business goes up. And of course, when the landfill space here in Jefferson County is full, there will never be another landfill in Jefferson County, as far as I don't believe that there will be. So in other words, things are going to have to be shipped further, which cost more. And so really, it's as much anything that landfill space is precious. It means a lot. It means a lot of money. It means a lot of convenience. So it's important for business that we have it. So it's important for us to try to conserve it, both for that reason and sustainability reasons. So who conducted this study? When we let the RFP for this, one of the things that we wanted was somebody to be impartial, somebody that can come in and look at things from the outside and give us a realistic look at what we're doing. Sometimes solid waste issues really does inflame passions. And we felt like that it was very important to have that impartial look. So the RFP actually went out. It was really a big study that we conducted. And it was awarded to a series of three consultants and an associate. MSW Consultants was the lead on it, and they're out of Orlando. Cascadia and Abbey Associates, those people did more on the third phase of the actually developing the recommendations. And what I can tell you is this is a highly experienced team that has done these studies and stuff in many of the biggest cities, many of the states across the country. So they're extremely experienced, and they bring with them a lot of experience that they can take a look and break things down and be able to put it to us in a way that we would understand. The scope of the study was three phases, and the first one is waste composition. So this is going to tell us what's in the waste, and then we was going to look at the collection system, how the waste is moved, where it goes, and then the last part was to take those two first phases and come up with some recommendations to increase diversion to make our landfill last longer. The first part I'll talk about is the waste composition study. And again, it is basically what is going into that landfill was the main thing that we wanted. And, we needed to break it down into its smallest measure so that we know what could be recycled, so we know what could be composted, so that we know, even what we can't recover now, what we might need to work towards to find recovery outlets for. Another area that we worked on was what went into our recycling stream. And so we measured what went into the like waste rock, and what comes off of the curb, what come out of the some businesses, so that we knew how we was doing in that regard as well. So we also wanted to do this so we can figure out how effective we were being in what we were trying to do. And we also wanted to look at the construction and demolition sector. Construction and demolition material is very heavy. It creates a lot of diversion numbers. A small change in the construction and demolition area can have a very big impact on our landfill. So we wanted to look at that as well. And then probably one of the more important things is the last item there is how much is being generated by each sector. And, those sectors, residential, institutional, commercial, I put institutional twice, but it's industrial, commercial, and institutional, C&D, and then self-hauled material. Self-haul is what citizens would haul directly, wouldn't go to it with a licensed hauler or a business that hauled their own material. So what they did was, as these trucks came in to a disposal facility or a recycling facility, they would pull one of those trucks aside, figure out what sector that the waste come from. Then they would dump it on the ground and they would take multiple samples out of that. Then they would take those samples and start to sort them down to their smallest degree. And they did that, as many samples as they could from each of the sectors, so that they had a good representative of what was actually going. So this was one of the reports, and this one is for all the waste streams that they took, the residential, ICI, C&D, everything. And I don't know if you can see it very well. Can you guys see the individual things fairly well? Okay, I tried to make it as big as I could. And what's interesting, you can see all the different items that were sampled. These could be items that are recyclable or they're not recyclable at this time. This report didn't really tell us. I mean, this was a very simple, this is what's in here. And it's really broke it down into very small. The biggest percentage of it was paper, obviously. Some of the other big surprises, I guess, was the amount of organics, and then how little metal that there was left. I think it was all kind of surprising. And another good thing that we saw from this is there's only 1% household hazardous materials, which is still pretty high when you consider they're hazardous materials. And so this kind of broke it down. Now, this one was for everything. In the study, if you go into there, you would see it for the same breakdown per sector. So you would have a residential sector, you would have an ICI sector, self-haul sector. And that's important for us to know, because a metal can that comes from a business is you educate differently than you would educate to get a metal can out of residential stream. So it was really important for us to understand where it came from and breaking it down as much as we could. So, and this is the residential stream here. So after the consultants got done breaking everything down, they took a look at the different options for recoverability in Jefferson County. We obviously, we have donations, we have drop-off centers, we have a household hazardous materials drop-off, we have a divertible e-waste program. So we have all these different programs. So they took a look at the waste that was going to the landfill to check to see, could this stuff be recovered? And it was a big, I don't know if it was a really big surprise, but it might be a big surprise to some, that there is a huge amount of material that is going to the landfill that can still be recovered. And, if we just had the program or the participation or good participation that would get the material into the right spot, we could do a whole lot. So this is a lot of times when people talk about, well, we need education. We already have a lot of these programs, but people don't put it where it needs to go. And then at the end of it, you see what's currently not recoverable. And that's the biggest percentage of it, 38%. So in essence, I think that most things can be recovered, but we're still, no matter what we do at this point, unless we develop other markets, we're still going to be putting a sizable amount of material into the landfill if we were doing an excellent job. So we're not ever going to be without landfills, and landfills are important and they serve a huge purpose, and we need them. These were some of the top 10 materials that was in there, and one of the biggest things is food waste, and we all know food waste is easily composted, and yet that's a massive stream. Food waste, when it's composted and put back into the community, back into the ground, is the best way to handle that stuff, and that's what we would want to do. So it's one of these things that makes you look at well, what's going in there? What can we do to recover more of that food waste? And another thing is not surprising is the cardboard and paper. Here was another big one that was a surprise to many people was textiles. A lot of clothing actually goes into the landfill. There are programs that are out there, and we almost started a program, and I think it was Recycle Right, or I can't remember what the name of it is.
Simple Recycling.
Simple Recycling. And it was a program that a company would come in and they would drop off a blue textiles bag at every property. And people could put their stuff in there and they would come by on a recycle day and pick that up. The deal kind of fell through because some of that issue with the way the collection system was in Jefferson County made it very difficult. So we wasn't able to get that done, but 41,000 tons a year of clothing and textiles that is going into the landfill, it's kind of like a big target. That's something that we need to try to address. And then compostable paper. Compostable paper is kind of a little bit, it might not have been compostable paper if it wasn't in there with the food. Once the paper is contaminated so much with food, then it basically becomes compostable paper instead of recyclable paper. So that's another thing. And then you can see all the other things down the list. So that was really kind of the high look at the waste composition study. So the study was actually conducted, I think, using 2016, 2017 numbers. So what I wanted to do is kind of give you a little bit of a look at where we're at. But Louisville Metro has always tracked things in three really distinct sectors. And it kind of gives us a better idea, not just of what's in the waste, but how we're doing as a community. And this first one is the residential curbside diversion statistics. And this is what is picked up at the curb. And this is our performance measures here. So what you will see is countywide, only 16.3% of the material that's picked up is actually recycled or composted. That's an astonishingly low number, to be honest with you. National average here is more up towards the 30%, 33%, I believe. But again, the measurement techniques are different all across the country. So we always need to be aware of that whenever we give a number, not to necessarily compare ourselves directly with somebody else because they may track it somewhat differently. So you can see the different performance, and you have primarily 5 haulers. There's actually a 6th that will be in here, but you primarily have 5 haulers, and then you have Metro that works within the urban services district. And you can see the different performance measures of how much garbage they picked up, how much recycling, and how much yard waste that they picked up. And basically the diversion rate is, you're dividing the recycling and the yard waste from the total tons, and that tells you how much you're keeping out of the landfill. So that's kind of where you're at. And, one of the bigger things that I would point out here is that you have a mix of different collection systems. And while you see a wide difference in performance, typically where you have an unorganized collection system or that is also a subscription system, then it's a little bit more difficult to get that participation that we need. And what you would see here is hauler number 2 is primarily in that type of system. So it has that hauler has the lowest curbside diversion rate. These are the 2 other statistics that we keep as far as how we're performing. The residential and ICI diversion statistics, that includes the curbside, which you just saw, but it also includes dumpsters from industry, commercial, and institutional, that they do a lot of recycling. And this is like the cardboard dumpsters that you might see, the cardboard coming out of a store. They generate a lot of cardboard. And then also the drop-off sites that you see. There's not just the government provided sites, which I believe that there's 19 of them now all across the county. It might be different, but you have all those. But you also have what is called like your drop-off sites for peddlers and metals that it would come from like a river metals, but it's not the industrial side. It's what would come out of the ICI sector and the residential sector. So that kind of drives that number up. And right now in 2019 we're at 26.6%, and you can see there that it says 2016 to 2019. So we do a rolling average of 4 years. We do that because of the wild swings in commodity pricing, and in certain materials there's speculation, so they'll hold material until the price goes up, and then you get a whole lot of it. That's primarily in the metal sector, but you can, that's why we do that rolling average. So right now we've always had a target rate of 27%. We actually achieved that at a certain point, but in the last in that one period of 2016 to 19, we've kind of dropped off a little bit, and some of that can be for reasons of cost. A lot of the commodity prices have went up, but probably one of the bigger reflections of this is more in landfill disposal seems to have went down. Now, whether that's a real thing is a little bit of a question, but there could be some kind of leakage in the numbers that maybe we're not getting a clear look, but we're trying to keep it the same way each and every time. And the last one is the overall diversion rate, and this one includes everything, and a lot of that is like construction and demolition material, which weighs a whole lot of, and also it would include that beneficial use and some industrial metals, not all, but concrete weighs a lot, and so it drives big numbers. And you can see we sit at 49.98%, which is 50%, and we've kind of held that overall diversion rate between I think 40 and 50% since probably about 10 to 15 years, and it's always been at least in that 40% range even before that. And what I would point out that while we still have ample landfill space in Jefferson County, somewhere in the range of about 34, 35 years, had we not been recycling and diverting that much material, where would we be? And again, it's important to take a look at where you've been, we've been successful, but we still need to do more. So we've done good. I don't know if we'd have been down at that 15-year range, might have been close, but when you get down into that 15 years remaining, the price starts to go up or thereabouts. So it's always to keep that in mind of why we're doing and how successful we've been. The second phase was the waste collection system study. And this was important for us to know how the material got to where it's going, the different service levels across the community, how many people were participating, the efficiency and cost and processing capabilities. And it really did, the study took a really big look into the operational details of the Department of Public Works and how it was doing. And then we needed to do it based upon the different areas of the county and then the collection type, which I'll get a little bit more into here directly. So what are these three different areas that we talk about? The first one is the Urban Services District. And on this map, you can see that is the orange and yellow, kind of all these different shades. And that makes up about 40% of the households in Louisville Metro. The second one is in purple, and these are actually home rule cities. Small cities is what they used to call them. And there's actually, I think, 82 of those small cities in Jefferson County. And one of the things that we had difficulty with the consultants was getting them to understand that while there was 82 small cities in Jefferson County, it was actually the smallest portion of Jefferson County. But eventually we got that squared away, and there was a little bit more focus put on that unincorporated area, which is the remaining of the portion of the county. Now, while it might be a little bit, the area is bigger. One of the things to keep in mind, the houses are a little bit further apart, but it's still 42% of the households in Jefferson County. Now, some of this would include HOAs, which are not listed up here. The different type of collection systems, and this is very important. You have a municipal system, and that's like the Department of Public Works and the City of Shively are what's considered organized collection systems. And those systems are paid for through taxes using municipal workers. Then you had the 82 home rule cities, and most of those are also organized collection. They contract those. So they will contract with licensed, waste district licensed haulers. So you have all these different contracts, and some of them will pay for recycling, some of them won't, some of them pay for yard waste, some of them have bulky waste, some of them don't. Then you'd have, I think that the City of Shively is the municipal one that's part of the home rule cities. And then the open market subscription. This is mostly, well, it's in the unincorporated area and a few of the really small cities where the individual homeowner has to subscribe to one of those licensed haulers. And this is where you can have up to 4 to 5 of those haulers picking up on the same street. And then the unincorporated area, of course, is what's considered unorganized. And that's where you have potentially the 4 to 5 different haulers picking up on the same street. So it's kind of really unorganized. It is a total open market driven thing. It's whatever the price that you can get. And this is almost all subscription based with some HOA contracts in there as well. So what did the consultants find in their assessment of our existing system? One was that collection offerings are not universally provided. And when you take a look at how those three areas, you have 82 small cities, you have the Urban Services District, and then unincorporated areas, you can have so many different various offerings out there on what services you can get and at what cost. So that is one of the things that they found was that because it was, the offerings were so across the board, it's difficult for residents to really understand how recycling and composting work. The other one is that program participation is mostly voluntary and that there's limited enforcement of regulations that do exist. The program participation, I think, works more towards that unincorporated area. You don't have to have recycling. It's optional. You can voluntarily subscribe to it in the same way with yard waste. So while that choice is a good thing, it's not necessarily a good thing for increasing your diversion. And in certain areas, because of the unorganized collection system, it makes it even more difficult. Now, the limited enforcement, that is an issue that's mostly centered around yard waste in the garbage stream. And it's very difficult. We've not had the ability to really go out and enforce that on a proactive basis. So whenever we had a complaint where there was a lot of yard waste in the trash, we would go address it. But we couldn't go out and proactively look and do education when it came to that. So we'll get into what we've done in that regard in just a little bit. Incentives to reduce waste and recycle are limited. And incentives could be like what they call a pay-as-you-throw program, meaning that you have all three services, but you pay based upon how much garbage that you generate. So that incentivizes people to put it in what they're recycling or they're composting and make their garbage can a lot smaller, which would reduce their cost. So that would be their incentive. Another thing is that would create incentive is that all the services are one fee, all inclusive, meaning that you get that regardless. And because there's a lot of people out there that they would recycle. They tell you that they would recycle if I didn't have to pay for it. Everybody else gets it for free, which isn't true. So that's another issue that we have. And then the last one was messaging is inconsistent. And when you look at our system of collection, it's not difficult to understand that if you're a resident in this area and you travel to another part of town, that the system of what's offered could be totally different. With different haulers, they use different colors, they use different insignias. So the message is inconsistent across Jefferson County, and that actually makes it difficult for people to understand and how to use the recycling and composting system correctly. So another thing that we looked at was the cost, and this is the prices during the study, and the prices ranged a great deal, and in keeping in mind the different collection systems, most of the organized collection systems where there's contracted haulers picking up every house on a block is a much cheaper system. And when you have the most haulers on that block is the most expensive because it has to be traveled so many different times to pick up the amount of material. And another thing about the price in the unincorporated area is also density. And, the further out you are, the further spread apart the homes are, the more expensive it is. For that same reason of skipping houses, It's just further that hauler has to go to pick up the waste. So it's a little bit understandable that the unincorporated area is going to be a little bit of an increase, but maybe if it wasn't an unorganized collection system, it wouldn't be so much. So in your recycling part, it's important to understand a couple things. Number one, the collection in the a every week versus an every other week, and that's what EOW stands for, makes a big difference in cost. But to be able to do every other week, you have to have the garbage capacity to do so. So anybody that's on a recycled bin, 16-gallon bin, they're not going to be able to go 2 weeks. Well, they could go 2 weeks, but after their bin is full, the rest of it's going to go into the garbage. So, you can see a big difference in the price there. The Department of Public Works is weekly. Some of the contracted areas are weekly, but a lot of them have went to every other week, and that saves money. And then the open market unincorporated area, I need to look at that number because I'm not sure that 1738 is correct. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it's not. I would have to look at that, so I won't really comment on it further. Yard waste varied significantly depending upon a few factors. One is whether it's weekly year-round, weekly but seasonal, or just a 2-season or a 1-season. So it's a little bit difficult, and that's what the consultants were saying. There were so many different various ways that things were picked up. There wasn't a standardized messaging, or not messaging, couldn't get messaging because all the different various ways that it was picked up. Bulky items, a lot of the times that, and you have to look at the different ways that this is picked up. In the Urban Services District with the Department of Public Works, there has traditionally been a 3-time a year, 4-time a year, unlimited items are set out. And it was a system that's been abused greatly. I mean, there are people that set out all the contents of their house or 5 houses because they bring it from other properties. Some of them, some of them in the suburban area, some of them from even in the Urban Services District, but it's an extra collection. So it's an extremely expensive system. And it's also the unlimited items includes a lot of small items, and these get scattered, creates massive amounts of litter, which takes a long time for us to clean up. So it's a very expensive system in which we're in the process of changing. Most of the other the contracted areas, they may include one item that could be set out every week on an appointment or once a month, or they may have a special pickup of so many items. And then in the unincorporated area, that may be included in your subscription or it may not. So a lot of times it was you either had to pay for it separately or it's included in your normal trash pickup with an appointment. And then when you averaged everything all inclusive, the study found these range of prices. And this is for somebody that has garbage, yard waste, and recycling. So you can see in the open market was the most expensive at $32, and in the Department of Public Works, $14.50, $14.60, to some of the contracted areas of $12.20. This is a little bit more up to date, and these numbers actually didn't come from the study. These numbers come from annual reporting that's required for all the licensed haulers. And you can see the various rates. And what I would point to you is, if you remember from the previous slide where we listed the different haulers, the one that has the number 2 that one is the one that picks up almost exclusively subscription unincorporated areas, which has the highest price. You can see the cost of recycling is very high and the cost of yard waste is very high. I'm not sure that that's where you're talking about there's a disincentive to recycle or to set out the yard waste. So they actually drive the numbers fairly high. But overall, the average in Jefferson County is 3188. And one other thing that I would point out is that these numbers include a lot of the contracts for HOAs and for the home rule cities. So some of the numbers for like hauler number 4 does mostly contracted work. So again, that's the organized collection system. So that price is a little bit lower. So it really does depend upon where you're at in Jefferson County, Louisville Metro, as to how many services that you get and what you're paying. So this was one of the things that criticisms, I guess, that the consultants had for us. Participation rates, and this one is a little bit different because it includes everybody, including the Urban Services District. And I've been compiling these for probably about 10 years, and I can tell you that it's difficult. It gets more difficult the further away from census data that you get. So 2010 was the last full census that was done. So you take the number of subscriptions, contract households that you have for each service against what census says is the number of households in Jefferson County. And that's what gives us our participation rate. 96.2% for trash service it's a good number. But when you're talking about 300,000 households, there's a lot of people out there that don't necessarily have garbage service. And what do they do with it? There's some of the illegal dumping issue right there. And we do get a lot of calls from people that, they haven't paid their subscription. And it's basically in the subscription unincorporated areas where this is happening because it's not contracted. And they're building up trash. And, the neighbors are calling because this place is building up this trash causing rats and so on and so forth. So while 96.2 sounds pretty good, it doesn't take a whole lot of households that aren't paying for their service and they're building up trash at home, then it becomes a community issue. And of course, the households with recycling, 40.2% and 37.7%, they've pretty much remained in that same area for quite some time. But if we truly want to continue to divert more waste and make our landfills last longer, we need to get those people participating in those services up there as high as what we can. And then this was the third phase, and this one was one that was taking the first phase, the materials, and the second phase collection system, bringing in community stakeholders such as the Jefferson County League of Cities, private haulers, community groups, and regular citizens, and bring them together, give them this information, let them know what some of the best practices are across the country, and let them drive, what we want to do in the future in this community to improve our diversion. So these were the first thing that was done when the stakeholder group got together was we created 8 guiding principles. The first one, there had to be stakeholder input. It doesn't matter what we do. We could have the best plan in the world, but if we don't have people that participated and had their say, it won't work. So we had to get that stakeholder input, and I believe that we did. The second one was that whatever we came out with, it needed to provide a foundation towards a goal of 90% diversion by 2042. We kind of tweaked that goal since then, but what this study needed to do was set us on a foundation to be able to achieve our goal. The next part was that whatever it was, it needed to be designed to be acceptable to the private sector partners. And I believe that the consultants worked with each one to understand their concerns. It might not have been perfect, but it, they felt that what they had put here in this study was acceptable. It also needed to preserve choice because it was very important that the home rule cities had the ability to contract and to have their own destiny. And so it was important for them that it preserved their choice to do so. The study also wanted to assure that essential services was accessible to all, and that was the goal. And when we talk about only 40% of the people having recycling services in Jefferson County, one of the things that this study wants to do is try to get everybody with those services instead of having this 40%. It also looked at other ways that waste was collected, which is that self-haul. And one of the numbers in self-haul, as far as how much of that was diverted, was only 7% of self-haul material was actually diverted when the vast majority of it was recoverable. So the study wanted to take a look at how we could recover that a little bit better. It also intended that we would have provide a high level of consistent countywide quality education and outreach. Consistent is the key word there. And the difficulty is that with so many different collection services offerings across the county, consistent messaging is difficult. And it's even a little bit more difficult when you have two different material recovery facilities that accept slightly different recyclable items. So it's a goal to get to a consistent service level so that we can have a consistent messaging and to make sure that it's something that everybody's hearing. The other thing, what the goal, the principles were, is striving to eliminate financial and other barriers. And that may be that, we don't want people to say, well, I can't do this because I don't want to pay for it. Other people get it for free, or I can't afford that. So it wanted to try to eliminate those things, and also that it was an affordable system and it was a cost-effective system, which balanced high diversion with a reasonable cost. And what I would say there, what we're talking about is that pretty much everything is recyclable or recoverable. At what cost? If we spent huge amounts of money, we can divert it all. But where's the benefit, the cost benefit analysis in what we're trying to do? What can we afford to do to get that high diversion? And that's something that the community has to decide as it moves forward. So it's really, when you talk about the study and recommendations, it's an ongoing assessment of where we're at as new materials can be recycled or other materials come out of favor of being recycled. The market dries up. So what did they come up with? And this is the first thing that I would want to point to on this screen is the 3 circles at the top. And when the study came out, it was kind of basic. It was 2016 was when a lot of the data was done. So at 2016, we had a 49% recovery rate. And we had a goal of 2042 of 90%. Well, the consultants suggested that we changed our goal to 90% by 90% by 2042. But in the middle, we would have a checkpoint. And we would take a look at our short-term goals that the stakeholders felt was the key. And we would run those programs for a period of 10 years. And then we would make a decision. We had a goal of getting to that 58% or 80-70 by 2026, which, because we haven't implemented everything, you have to take the year with a grain of salt. So, I think that we're not at a point where we're going to say, well, how are we doing? Because we've implemented a few things, but we haven't implemented much since the study got completed, which was in 2018, I believe, in the beginning of 18. And we've had a little bit of a pandemic or something like that. I don't know what that was in the middle of there. And then we had some issues with our waste management district board that had to be worked out. So when you look at these, you have your short term and long term. And I needed to explain the 90 by 90 by 42. If you look down in the lower right hand corner, you see 1, 2, and 3, the diversion rate. And the number 2 is 80% participation and 70% diversion of recoverable materials. So if you go back and you look and you remember the chart that showed that 38% of the material wasn't recoverable in our current system. So we understand that. But what we want to recover now in this number 2, the midpoint, is we want to recover 70% of those remaining materials. We already understand that other material is going to go to the landfill, but we want to at least recover 70% of the materials that we already can recover. And we want 80% of the people to be participating. But we're not at 80% by any means. We're still at 40. So, and then by 2042, we wanted to have a 90% participation rate and a 90% diversion of recoverable materials. So that's what we wanted to get to. Some of the other things that, now that I'm going to move on to the short-term goals, and I blew it up a little bit bigger, is that this is what the consultants came up with. And you would have to get into each one of these individually to see exactly what they were recommending, way more than what we can get into in a webinar. But you also see that these at the top, your programs, policies, and infrastructure strategies. And they base this upon those sectors. Again, it's important to understand the sector in which the material is coming out of so that you can tailor your programs against those. So the first one is residential, and you'll see an X under the different programs that they recommended. The ICI sector, the same. SH is self-haul, and then there's C and D. So they created these recommendations, and I believe that there's 22 in total in these short-term 10-year period. And you can see in here some of them: waste reduction and reuse education, partner with local reuse stores, residential countywide service level standards, carts provided for recycling, standardized bins and labels, and embedded fees, bulky waste processing and such. So you can kind of slide across to see where they made a recommendation. So what's the current status? Well, after the study was complete, the study was actually presented to the Metro Council and to the Waste Management District Board. The Waste Management District, by the way, is a board created by the county using Kentucky law. And it's much like the Metropolitan Sewer District or the Air Pollution Control District. It's a district that is created with a focus on a certain topic, with waste, solid waste, being the one for the Waste Management District. And its powers are set by the county, and it can't pass ordinance, but it can pass regulation. And it's given certain tasks such as solid waste management planning. And it's kind of a little bit complicated how Metro government and the Waste Management District work, but it's basically Metro Council saying, Waste Management District, you're going to handle this. This is your responsibilities. We're going to watch and we'll give our input. So that's kind of where that's at. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And then the other status is that that you have to remember is that any of the changes or recommendations, if they're going to be done, this is not something that is this. We're going to adopt all these recommendations all at once, and we're just going to do it. No, it's not like that. These are recommendations out of this study. The real work is part of what is called the 5-year solid waste management plan, which the Waste Management District completes every 5 years. It looks at all the systems of waste management and then comes up with initiatives or action plans to address those things. So while this study is great and the recommendations are recommendations, anything that would happen from it would have to go through that 5-year solid waste management plan. And it would also have to go through a public notice process and a public comment process with public hearings before anything would be adopted. And that would take time, and it wouldn't be in a vacuum either. Because as I said earlier, it doesn't matter if we come up with a plan that we think is the best plan, or it could be the best plan in the world. Unless you have public input, it's just not going to work. Okay, so some of the things, the initiatives that has taken place, and these are primarily done not exactly the way some of the recommendations are, but they're based upon the recommendations and what their intent is to do. One is pop-up drop-off events. And this was to target that self-haul that only had a 7% diversion rate. And these are conducted 9 times a year through an agreement with the Waste District and Metro Government, the Department of Public Works, where citizens can bring material, and we're going to do as best we can at separating it and recovering as much of it as we can. So these are going to be held in 3 different parts of Louisville Metro: the South, West, the Central County, and the East County. And it'll move through there. We conducted 3 events this past year, and instead of a 7% diversion rate, we were getting upwards of 30 and 40%, I believe. So it's a start. It doesn't get the businesses that are self-hauling, but it gets the residents that are self-hauling. Another one is recycling carts and every other week collection. And the focus right now is in the Urban Services District. And this kind of goes into that service level standards. And, a lot of the home rule cities are doing a really good job. They have the large capacity containers, and they have been able to go to every other week recycling. I think that's where we all need to go. So that would be part of that standardizing that service across the city. Well, as you know, most of the Urban Services District is still in the 16-gallon bins. And we've been working with the Recycling Partnership and CERTIC, and we've just gotten approval on 2 grants. Number one with Waste Management District's help of $280,000, but we've gotten $1 million of grants, and we're going to be able to buy up to 28,000 recycled carts. So that's going to allow us to get to that every other week recycling in the Urban Services District, which is a good thing. Another thing that we've been working on is what's called a Recycle Right program, and it's a tagging program to where we are going to be going from this house to house, looking at what's in the bin, seeing how they're doing recycling. If they're doing great, they get a green tag that says, oh, Karen, help me out.
Way to know.
Way to know. And then they get if they've got some material in there that's not good, but it's not killing the material recovery facility, they get a yellow tag, and we still pick it up. And then the last one is if you get a red tag, we're not going to pick it up because it's basically garbage. So that's a recycle right program that we're doing, and that kind of goes into that expanded marketing campaign for residential. So we're out there educating and what we're trying to do, and we're marketing, and we're trying to do a better job of that. Now the next thing is the Waste Management District hired an extra educator, hi Diane. That's Diane, and then another enforcement officer, where this enforcement officer is going to be focused on more like an education enforcement officer. And they're going to help run that Recycle Right program, but they're also going to be able to eventually start to work towards getting some of the yard waste material out of the garbage stream, where that one criticism of our system was. So that is going to be, that has taken place, and we have them in place. We have been slowed down greatly by the pandemic in the past year. So it's been difficult, but we hopefully the country, the world, and our community is going to be getting out of this pandemic soon, and we're going to be able to kind of ramp up some of the things that we've done. So where can you find the study? You can actually go to, and I guess you can't follow this link, but you can go to the LouisvilleKY.gov website, or the Louisville Waste District.org, or Louisville KY. Karen, can you do this one? You're better at the links.
Yeah, the LouisvilleKY.gov. If you go to the Department of Public Works main page, the solid waste study is actually in the menu there on the left navigation. So you can just click on the solid waste study. And then on our district website, it's posted there as well, but it links you to the page on LouisvilleKY.gov. It's a big study, but it has different links, so you can kind of look at just the different portions of it that Pete talked about.
And then, of course, there is the contact information. You can always contact me, Karen, or Keith Hackett, who is the Assistant Director of Public Works and the Executive Director of the Waste District, and get information through them. I would also say that you can contact Diane Moon as well. Hers is diane.moon@louisvilleky.gov. And we'll all be happy to help you, or to even answer questions for you. So that is the 5,000-foot view of the solid waste management study and recommendations. I can tell you that the study was very deep. And if you went and you looked at all the different data and information from it, it would be easy to jump down in a wormhole, a rabbit hole, and you could be in there all day if you like data and stuff like that. So, but that's it. And if you guys have any questions, then I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, so I have a question. Has the pay-as-you-throw ever been tried in Louisville, and are there barriers to implementing this system?
Well, if we go back to the recommendations, where you'll see that fall is in the longer term goals of the recommendations. It has not been tried in Louisville, at least in the urban services district. It maybe has been done in one of the home rule cities, but I do not think so. It's a great program, but I think that you have to have certain things in place before you could be able to do that.
Okay, thank you for that question. And we'll wait a few minutes. If anybody else has anything, you can enter that in the chat. We certainly appreciate Pete's presentation, and it's a big topic here. So, so this will be good for anybody that's interested. It's hard to kind of look at the study and really read it and understand it. So I think anybody interested in this topic, this webinar will be a good one to watch. And so if there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and